Namaskar. In an earlier video that I did for this channel, it was on the farmers' protest part 1. I used the words civilized society and Hindu civilized society or civilized Hindu society. I got a few reactions on the usage of those phrases. My sister, for instance, called up to say it was good, but I was wondering why you used that word initially, but later when you used it again, it got a little clear. My niece, on the other hand, wrote me quite a very pointed note, which I'll just share the relevant portions here. After saying that yes, she appreciated the video and it was useful and gave her some insights, etc. She did say, on a personal note, I'm unsure why I felt a little uncomfortable on the repeated mention of Hindu. And then she goes on, she gave some specific points and then says that I would like to hear your thoughts on this, if and when possible. I think that's a very relevant point, especially since it's coming from the next generation, who really are the torchbearers who have to take human civilization as a whole to its destined state of excellence. The world over, deeply divisive habits fueled by a very divisive media and pushing us into corners, identity corners. Either you're a Hindu or a Muslim or a Christian or a Jew, either you are black or you're white, either you're a Westerner or Easterner, either you are rich or poor, either you're man or woman. Even to that extent, the identities that we are holding, national identities, religious identities, identities of thought, for instance, left and right. The media somehow makes it believe as if the entire human race is divided into those on the left and those on the right. I think it is, I would like to share with you my concern about this, and also to put in context, since I am responsible for using that phrase, Hindu society, where that is coming from and why it is important for us not to avoid, or which is what we do, isn't it? When we are uncomfortable, with some other identity, we just withdraw and, into our shells, or just seek out, the bar or the club or the mall or the party where only like-minded people like us are there, so that we don't have to face the reality of differences. Let us have a look at this, shall we? In my journey, in my various capacities as an urban, educated intellectual first, as a journalist, and later as a person who really traversed the length and breadth of this country, saw not only India but Bharat, the hinterland, the villages of India, and who now is residing in rural India, in Maharashtra, practicing organic farming. The breadth of this experience has raised many questions in my mind. What has been of concern in all my discussions with intellectuals, with my family, with friends, with my neighbors, with community, all these discussions have brought the focus onto this point about the complete domination of the West over the rest of the world, that we are totally lost and have become complete imitators. And anyone who questions any of this is considered, to be an iconoclast, is considered to be someone, okay, you can tolerate him, but he's either some native, or he must be some, some radical, local group or something like that. This process is what led us to start thinking for ourselves as to what if we were to find an Indian solution to Indian problems of agriculture. That is something we are discussing right now, isn't it? The farmers' protests, etc. Where is the Indian thought, the Indian solution to this problem from an Indian perspective? Keeping the local issues, local traditions, local customs, local agriculture practices, and the local, problems, social problems of the farming sector. It's such a subconscious thing that is happening, that we are conditioned to think this is the only way, this is the right way. So the whole world, globalization has done this. The whole world has been reduced to a single story world, as if this is the only way things can happen. This is the way, right way. This is the way improvement can be made. This is the way progress can be achieved. Now, what has happened because of this conditioning, and what one realizes very joyfully when this conditioning breaks, is the beauty of the whole. This is only a very part, it's a single story which we see. When that conditioning starts to dissolve and we see in a holistic way how human civilizations have developed, have evolved all over this planet, and in particular if one looks at the way Indian civilization has evolved and developed and is evolving in this very land of ours, then I think it gives us a very beautiful perspective, which certainly makes us question to begin with, and later even to change the way we live. But it certainly begins with questioning this entire imitation of the single story which has been brought about by the West. And here we get into this whole thing of Bharatiyata, of what Indian civilization is, and what is called the greatness of Indian civilization. Is there any truth in it, that there is something great about Indian civilization? Now, there are two views about this, especially among the urban, educated individuals. One view is that is the view of the colonialist, or some of them, not all of them, some of them, who wrote that India is a land of barbarians and savages, and that we need to be educated and trained to be civilized human beings. The guy who came to kill and loot is civilized, so we have to become like them. And these people, very subtly, it's not a complaint and it's not a blame, but our education itself has made such a deep conditioning in us that they feel that anything Indian is not enough, is backward, is not good, and anything modern and anything that has happened within the framework of the thought process of the world in the last 200 years, that is it, and that is the place from which we have to move. And then there is another group which is politically active now, but this group probably has always been there, and they would rather use the word Hindutva to refer to the greatness of Indian civilization, and which of course confuses you and especially my niece. And by using the word Hindutva, they try to redefine the greatness of Indian civilization into a very narrow region, and also they go beyond fact and into the realm of fiction also sometimes, in trying to in a very laudatory way, trying to praise the greatness of Indian civilization. I feel the truth is in neither of these two places. Of course, there's something beautiful that has happened in Indian civilization, and if you ask me what it is, even in this small video, I can put it briefly in, say, 3 or 4 points. I've not counted them. The first and foremost and the foundational beauty of this Indian civilization is the spirit of inquiry. You can see in the spiritual realm what the spirit of inquiry has brought forward, and this is acknowledged by people all over the world. The greatness of the spiritual texts and spiritual thought that Indian inquiry has produced. That spirit of inquiry, about which we will open it up a little further, is foundational, and I think that is something we should not let go. We should not just let this group, let us deviate or give up something good that we have. The second great contribution, I think, which in Indian civilization I see, is in the realm of decentralized growth. Centralization has come more and more as modernity has progressed. So rather than call it decentralized, we can call it non-centralized. A non-centralized local modes of living, a non-centralized local modes of production of various goods, a non-centralized local modes of development of technology. All these things were developed to such an extent that in a non-centralized, decentralized local production method, without competition, without industrialization, without centralized marketing, we could still achieve 250 years ago 27 to 28% of world trade. That is what India was controlling. Controlling is the wrong word. That is what we were contributing, without even trying to be competitive, without all this mantras of GDP and and export and market share and all these phony things that have come into economics today. So that part of a non-centralized concept of living where everything is allowed to sprout everywhere, that is the beauty which we see in nature, isn't it? Like here in this farm, what we call as biodiversity. A human being is also part of that biodiversity. And human living, if it has to be in sync with nature, then how can it look? How would it be if human communities too were as diverse and as rich as beautiful and as harmonious with each other as nature is? I think a lot of experiment has been done in Indian civilization regarding that. A third beautiful thing that has happened in Indian civilization is acceptance of differences and trying to overcome differences between different communities with different mindsets, with different beliefs, and trying to have a working relationship amongst them. Have we achieved perfection there? No. Just like we did achieve perfection in the economic sphere or the spiritual sphere, but in the social sphere, our efforts at bridging those differences, at trying to give each community its independence, but at the same time trying to work together, I think it's a terrific experiment. Considering that even today, as of 2021, two races in America cannot live with each other, and they are killing each other on the streets. I mean, if you see, that is the state of 2021. And if you see in comparison to that, the kinds of differences which we have. I mean, they have just two races, black and white. But the kind of differences we have had in our various communities, because India is very, very diverse, geographically, with its large landmass and different regions, with forests and deserts and coastal regions and with seas and with rivers and all these different communities trying to at least live together, and that story is available in our tradition. I think that's a third thing. So in the spiritual inquiry, in economic development, which always kept egalitarianism, as part of it, and the social sphere. I think these are three areas where Indian greatness is there. It can be seen, and there is something certainly good to learn from it. What do I mean when I say the spirit of inquiry? The spirit of inquiry refers to that wanting to seek the truth, wanting to know, a curiosity which is developed, which is sharpened, and there is a systematic way in which it is encouraged in society. This is a land of seekers, a land of truth seekers. You will be amazed to know that in this land there are so many darshans. A darshan is a worldview, a complete view of existence. It's an existential map. What is life? What is matter? What is the relationship between different beings in the universe? What is this cosmological significance of everything? And very important, all these inquiries are for the purpose of achieving excellence in the human being. That is a very important point. These have not just been seekers who provided darshan for academic inquiry, for getting PhDs in universities. These are people who lived their lives, the way they saw that truthfully it has to be lived. And through their own life, through their own realizations, they imparted darshans which have been acknowledged all over the world as absolutely the highest level of thinking that man has achieved. Interestingly, it is not just one darshan we are talking about, Hinduism within quotes. There is no such thing, there is no such word. What we are talking when we say the Indian civilizational way of inquiry is that we have so many, many darshans. We have what is called Astika darshans and Nastika darshans. People who know these words will know what I am referring to. The Astika darshans are those which believe that there is some force, some power, and which is a source of all being, which is a source of all creation, and which is there inherent in every existential activity that is happening here. The Western world has given us the word God. So nowadays, Astika is also defined, not very accurately, as those who believe that there is a God. But that is not the accurate definition. Now there are Nastika darshans in India also, from the same land, Nastika darshans, which said that there is no such, thing or force or entity or anything. Let us not get into that. And they defined the world, they saw the world through other ways of interpretation. Two important things here. One is that both the Astika and the Nastika, they are not opposites of each other. They coexisted, and they coexisted beautifully. Both of them, in fact, had a common objective, and that was to seek the truth. Among or within the Astika Darshan itself, there is a concept of Shad Darshana, six different worldviews: Sankhya, Yoga, Nyaya, Vaisheshika, Mimamsa, Vedanta. And these have subtle but very fundamental differences in the way they studied and in the way they have interpreted what this entire existence is. Similarly, in the Nastika Darshan, there are many. There is Buddhism, which is the ism word has been added now, but many people introduce Jainism also into the Nastika, and there are several other. There is also one called Charaka. I don't know how many of you are aware. Charaka is a darshana, is a Nastika darshana available which has sprung up from this very Indian civilization, which completely questions everything that all the six Astika darshanas have said. And it says there is not only is there no such thing or force or being or entity or force which is there in this existential movement. Not only is there no such thing, but also that human being is only material. It is just the body, which goes totally contrary, or should I say, different from the other Astika darshans. But the beautiful part is the proponents, the followers, the seekers, I should say, not followers, the seekers, the studiers of all these darshans, they all coexisted in society. And that is the beauty. When I say spiritual inquiry, I'm referring to that beauty of harmonious examination of truth in society, when you allow and encourage everyone to pursue the truth. Now, all this defies description in the English language from the English Western cultural perspective. It defies a description, because when they say religion, they mean something else. Religion in the West has happened historically in its own way, which is very, very different from ours. Both Christianity, not both, Christianity as well as Islam, as well as Judaism, these are what we call Abrahamic religions, which arose from one single point and etc. and spread everywhere. We are not going to go into the details, but their view of religion as emanating in a certain way, told in a certain pattern, dependent on a certain book, and highly restricted to a certain thought process, is their culture, And when they came here and described Hinduism as a religion, that has, I think, begun the whole problem, because this is not comparable. The way our civilization has evolved is different, just like the Mayan civilization in South America, the Mesopotamian here and the Egyptian there, they've all evolved in their own ways. To understand this distinction, I think, is the beginning of liberation in a certain sense, because we are all such imitators and slaves of the single story view of the world. That the world is this is the way it has to happen. Economics, this is the way it has to happen. Education, this is the way it has to happen. And governance and justice system, this is the way it has to happen. That single source which has brought all this, from the West through imperialism and colonialism, we have adopted it, unthinkingly, I would say, because of 200 years of conditioning. And this breaking of conditioning is essentially is what many of us have felt. Now, to connect this to what is happening now, since 2014, with this revival, I should say, or this new thrust to this movement of political movement of Hindutva, there is a bit of a conflict. There is a bit of a conflict which people like me, and I have many friends who share my view, we feel this is a very serious conflict that we must look at. Just because there is an extreme political opinion and an extreme political behavior, but which uses the word Hindutva, I think people like us should not shy away from it, from anything that refers to Indian civilization as a whole. If I felt that you don't like the word Hindu, for me to drop it is very easy. But that will not do. The word is not the problem. what we associate when we say Hindu, what we associate when we hear the word Christian or is Muslim, what we associate when we hear the words white or black, as in race, what we perceive when we hear the word gender, as in female and male. The words are not the problem. What we perceive is the problem. Primarily, what we are aiming at, and why I use the word Hindustan and Bharat and Indian worldview and our own solutions, is this: that we must not sacrifice our independent way of thinking, and we must not sacrifice at any cost our way of exploring and continuing that beautiful tradition of inquiry that this land is known for. That, in a nutshell, is what I'm trying to talk about when I use words like Hinduism, Hindutva, etc. I hope my niece Namrata is satisfied with this explanation. All further clarifications can also be provided. Thank you.